Hello everyone, this is Omar. Welcome to the channel. Today we are starting RHCSA exam series. This exam series applies to both RHCSA 8 and RHCSA 9. So if you're preparing for RHCSA 8 or 9, this series, I hope that this series will help you. So let's start. But before we begin, please note that this is not the system administration training. This series of videos will be focused solely on RHCSA exam practice. So we will be going through multiple practice exam questions, and we will be trying to solve them. So the basic assumption out here is that you already know how to install Linux and you already know the basic commands and some sort of understanding of Red Hat Linux. So if you, it's okay if you don't know that. So you can still go through this series and try to understand that, because I'll be covering most of the commands which we will be using. I'll be covering them. I will be explaining the commands as well in most cases. And in every video, I'll be giving you a reference document related to that particular video. So if you see this document will be I will put it in the description section. You can check from there, and at the bottom you'll see the reference document. So in every video, I'll try to give you Red Hat's reference document so that you can go through it and learn more about it. All right. So let's go through this one. Let's begin. So why it is important to set up a proper lab for the environment, okay, for RHCS exam practice. It's very important because you have to, if you simulate the lab properly, very close to the exam environment, it will help you practice the questions you may face in the exam. So because most student generally they just configure 2 or 3 machines and then they configure the repository differently, but in the exam they get confused. So what we will try to create a lab as close to exam as possible. So we are having 3 servers. I already have these servers. Red Hat Linux 9 is installed. Basically, we will be solving the question on node 01 and node 02. So some of the questions we will be solving on node 01 and some of them will be solving on node 02. But we are also having this server 01. Why do we have that? Because to solve some questions on node 01 and node 02, you have to have certain things available in node 01 and node 02, which is like repository configuration. So for repository configuration, you have to depend on the repository server, which will be somewhere else. Similarly, you will have NFS server, you will have NTP server as well. So what we will do, we will configure a repository server over HTTP on server 01. We will configure NFS server on server 01, and we will configure NTP server on server 01. So these 3 things we will be configuring on server 01 so that it will help us solving the questions related to those components. All right. So let's begin. What we are going to do right now is we will be in this particular video we will be only focusing on repository configuration. So on server 01 we will configure the repository server locally, and then we will convert the local repository server over HTTP. We will configure Apache and we will configure the repository server over HTTP. So I'll show you how to do that. So this is the first video which will help us prepare a proper lab so that we can go through the practice exam questions. All right. So these 3 servers are already there. As you can see, this is my first server, which is server 01. This is node 01. And this one is our node 02. As I said, we will be solving most of the questions on node 01 and node 02. But server 01 we will be using for the repository configuration and NFS server and NTP server. Right, so let's go ahead and start configuring our repository server. So the first thing first is you have to have the ISO image attached to this server 01, which we have already in place. So Red Hat installation media is already there. What we will do is we will create this directory and mount that media. So this directory naming convention, you can have your own naming convention. That's not an issue. But I'm following this standard. If you want to follow that, that's fine. If you want to follow some other naming convention, that's also fine. So what we are doing, we are having this SR01. This is a device, and this is also SDA, because all the devices actually are under /dev. So if you see this device, this is a short name. SDA will always be under /dev, and SR01 will always be under /dev. So you have to mount /dev/SR01 to your required directory. We have mounted. Just don't worry about this warning because it is mounted read only. We will not be writing anything to this. So this is what we want. So our dev01 is mounted on cdrom. So it is, let's see if it is accessible, or we can see. Yes, we can see the content of this one. All right. Second thing is we will start configuring the local repository. So we don't want to configure it on mnt01 because it will be maybe unmounted later on. So what we will do, we'll copy, we'll make local directory mkdir rel9. Again, this naming convention you can follow some other as well. So we'll go to that directory. I'll try to go very quickly and explain very briefly about every steps. Now, what we are doing, we are copying the content from mnt cdrom to this local directory which we created. Right. So this will take a couple of minutes. I will take you through the rest of the steps. So basically what we will be doing, we will be configuring the local repository first. We will be installing the Apache server, and then we will convert our local repository over HTTP using the Apache server, so that our node 01 and node 02 can access the repository over HTTP to install the packages. All right. So that's done. So we have copied it. If you can see, it's under rel9. We copied the content of the cdrom. We don't need the cdrom anymore, so we can just go ahead and unmount it if you want. All right. So as you can see, it's not there. That's the device. So clear it. All right. Now we have the content copied. Now the next thing is we'll create the repository configuration file. Repository configuration file is always under, you have to memorize these locations. Very important. Repository configuration file is under /etc yum.repos.d. So let's go there. You will see there is one file already there by default. If you see the content of that file all commented out, that means it's nothing is there. And to verify that the repository is configured or not, we will run this command dnf repo list all. It says no repositories available, and it gives you this message as well. I'll explain you why this message and how they can get rid of that. All right. So what we will do, we'll create a repo configuration file under this directory. Again, this naming convention can be anything you want, but the extension should be .repo so that it can read the proper configuration. Now I already have the configuration here. You can copy and paste from my description section, or you can just write it to practice we will go through this one later on. I'm just going through all these settings very quickly. So we configured the repository configuration file. Now to check that, we can run that command again, repo list all. As you can see, there was no repo configured before. Now you can see AppStream and base OS is enabled. Now we are getting this message again and again. So that's fine if you want to just live with it, or if you want to get rid of that, you can just go to etc dnf plugins subscription manager. You can just change this to 0. It will disable. Just run the dnf repo list all again. That message is disappeared. Now this command is what does this command do? This command actually goes and reads your repo configuration file, which is this one. Okay. These two, because nothing is there in this one, so it reads this one and it says okay, it is enabled, because if you see the configuration, we have enabled it. So it goes, this command actually goes and reads the file and says, okay, it is enabled. It is not validating your URL. It is not validating your base URL. I will demonstrate this one later on in this video. So, but we will just, for the sake of our confirmation, we'll go, this file exists, this directory exists, the content exists. Similarly, we'll try to go here and check if there is a directory exists and the content exists. Fine. So we are good with that. Let's go back to our Repo configuration directory. So we are here. So let's check again. Repo list all. It is there. All right. We have disabled that message as well. Now this is the important part. You always, this command actually, as I said, the repo list command, it will go and read the file. It will not validate the location. So to make sure that your configuration is correct, you always install a package and see if your configuration is fine. So in this case, we will just go ahead and install httpd, because we will have to configure Apache server. So we'll install httpd. This will also verify whether our local repo configuration is correct or not. So as you can see, it's installing the packages. It's installed httpd and its dependencies. That means our local repository is configured correctly. So it is going and reading from that location and installing the packages. So our configuration is fine. Right now, local configuration is done. I'll just show you on node 01. There is nothing. Repo list all. It's not configured because we did not do anything. We did not touch the node 01. Okay, so local configuration, local repository configuration is done. Now the next step is we will convert your local repo over HTTP. So even on the local server on this one, we will convert the local repository over HTTP over Apache server. Right. So for that, we already installed the package for HTTPD. We will just enable the start and enable the service. What this command will do, it will enable HTTP on startup. -- now flag means it will start the service as well. So it will enable and start the service. Let's go ahead and check the status of HTTPD. It's up and running. All right. So it is active and it is enabled. All right. So that's been done. Now what we will do is, whenever you install Apache, any web server, it has document root directory where it serves it reads the pages and the documents and all the relevant files from there. So whenever you install Apache, the default location for its document root is where www.html. So all the files will be served for this web server from this directory. So whatever files you want to content you want to put, you can use those content will be served from this location. All right. So what we want to do is we want to serve repo content, all the RHCL9. We will move to this location because we want our clients and other servers to access our repository over Apache server. So we moved it. All right. So let's go. We are already there. Let's see if the file is, the directory is copied, all the content is there. All right, and we will go to / rel is not there here. Okay, so we moved it. Let's clear it. Now these commands I will go through very quickly. I will not go in details of the security context and firewall setting, because we will be covering that at the later stage when we are solving the questions related to content, the security context and firewall. So what we will do, I'll quickly run this command. I will explain that one later on to you. We are changing the context of the content under this directory to this one for HTTPD service to read the contents. All right. Don't worry about this one. We will cover this later on. Okay. So I'm just going through it very quickly. Then we have to make some changes to firewall. So firewall will be running generally, but let's confirm that. Yes, it is running. So firewall is up and running. So for that, we will see the firewall configuration. Firewall cmd -- list all will show you the firewall configuration. Now, why do we need the firewall configuration in this one? Because for the local repository, we will not need firewall, but for node 01 and node 02 to access the repository or HTTP and port 80, we have to add the service and the port in firewall. So this command will do that for us. So we are what firewall cmd, we are adding the service. HTTP minus minus permanent flag is for the persistency of the change. All right, and then we will also add the port. We'll also add the port. So always whenever you make changes to firewall, make sure that you reload it. Make sure that it is getting the effect. So firewall cmd minus minus list minus all. You can see HTTP is configured as a service and port 80 is there enabled. Okay, so the next configuration is we have to make the changes because we configured the local repository. If you see, we configured this file to read from this location, and this is a file because local repository, but we are not changing for this base URL to read over HTTP from a different location because we already moved the file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all this just to save the time. I will copy this one. You can take this configuration from the description section and try to understand each and every parameter. But base URL, as you can see, it is changed to HTTP server 01, which is our local server, rel9 and base OS. Now this is going to over the HTTP server, which is running on server 01 under this location. All right, so it should go and read from there. All right, so this is done. Now when I go and check the repo address, it's still saying enabled because it is reading the file. Now here is the catch which I wanted to explain you. etc yum.repo. So in this file, if you see what we have configured to read the configuration over HTTP, it goes to HTTP server and read the repo files from here. Now if I run dnf repo list all, if I run dnf repo list all, it says it is enabled. All right, what does it mean? It is going and reading this file and checking the content of this file. It's not validating your base URL. Right? So even if this configuration is incorrect, it will still show you file is. This is the mistake many people do. They said our configuration, repository was enabled, but we are not able to install the packages because you have to make sure that packages is installed. This base URL is configured correctly and other parameters configured correctly. So to demonstrate that, DNF it is showing, but if I try to install a package, let's say for example a test package, it should fail. I will tell you why it will fail. Let me clear this screen for you. It should fail because when I say repo list all, dnf repo list all, it says it is enabled, but I'm not able to install the packages. Why? Because when you install it, it goes and validates and try to read the base URL and other configuration. So if you're not able to install, that means your configuration is not correct. So for that to happen, that if you remember what I did, I purposely skipped this section. I did not update the host file. Because I did not update the host file, it is not able to connect to the server with the host name. That's why it's failing. So basically it is not finding the Apache server running on that node. So what I will do, I will update the host entries. Now it should be able to go and read the file and go to that location and install. So if I run this one now, it should succeed. You see? So Now locally on this server, the repository is configured over HTTP. So our local repository is configured over HTTP. Now, since it is configured, now this HTTP, as long as node 01 and node 02 are able to access server 01, they will be able to access the repository, right? Because we already enabled the HTTP service in firewall and port 80. So this web server is ready to serve the content under that root directory. So our repository is configured under that. So let's go. So this section is completed. Now we'll try to configure the repository on node 01 and node 02 over HTTP. So let's go to node 01. So if we go and check repo list all, it is not configured. So what to get rid of this message, as I already explained you, we'll go etc dnf plugins subscription manager. We will change it to this. All right, and then we will update our host file. We will update the host file so that it can communicate. Just make sure that server 01 is accessible. Good. Server 01 is accessible. We have already done that. So the final part is, let's create a configuration file. All right. These location and everything I've already explained. So let me go through it very quickly. So we updated this one. Then we will do the repo list command. It is enabled. As I said earlier, you always have to install the package dnf install. Just for the test purpose, we will install this telnet to make sure that our repository is configured. Yes, it is going through fine. It is going over HTTP as configured in our yum.repos file. So I will show you. It went over HTTP, went to the server and read the configuration, read the packages information from there and install the packages. Okay, so this completes our configuration of repository on node 01. I will go through the same thing on node 02 very quickly just to make sure that it's working fine out there. So we will go to DNF plugins subscription manager, disable that message. We will go and update the host file. Update the host file configuration, and then we have already disabled this one. Then we will create this configuration. We will create this one. We will quickly paste this one, and then we will verify the repo list command. It's enabled, but it's not. We have to make sure that it is there. Yes, it is there. So our configuration is correct. This installation is going fine. We installed the packages. Again, this is the reference document. So we will be continuing our journey for RHCSA practice exam series. Thank you for watching and have a good day. Thank you.